what's up guys, my name is Caleb and welcome back to my channel. Now today I wanted to talk to you about something that I think is really important that might be impacting almost every single person that's watching this video. Now, to start things off, how would you feel if you had $500 only to your name and I were to take $100 of that and just light it on fire right in front of you? Now what if I did this with $1,000 or $10,000 or $100,000, how would you feel? What I'm getting at here is there is basically three ways that you can waste money, that you can burn money away. The first is lighting it on fire, of course. The second is buying depreciating assets. So these are things that don't make you money. This is things like a gallon of milk or a used car. Things that will not bring you value in the future. Basically consuming stuff. And the third thing is speculative investing. So when you are basically gambling in something that you don't understand with your investments, you know, the newest crypto in town is a perfect example. So what this is all leading up to here is the idea of lifestyle inflation, and that's what I wanted to talk to y'all about. Lifestyle inflation is when you let your spending go up proportionally as your income increases. So the more you make, the more you spend, and this is a horrible habit for wealth building. Now, to give an example, imagine you make $2,500 a month, and of that you typically spend about $500 on things, or $500 is how much you have to spend on things. Now imagine you went over this by $100 and spent $600. Now you might miss a bill, you might get behind on your savings, and if you only spent $400, you feel like you can justify spending a little bit more because your lifestyle is used to that $500 like before. So $500 is 20% of your monthly income in this example at $2,500. Now imagine you land a nice new job, things are getting better for you, things are looking up, you're, improving your situation. 2 years later, you now make $5,000 a month. Assuming you haven't changed any of your spending habits and lifestyle, 20% of your income is still being used for spending because that's what feels normal and what your brain is used to doing. This means you're now spending $1,000 a month, which is actually double what you spent before, even though it doesn't really feel any different. Now, you might make more money, so what felt like a lot before might not feel so bad now, and I totally get that. But this happens to a lot of people who don't budget and they might not even realize it, and this makes it very difficult to build wealth. So everyone remembers being a young teenager, barely having any money for things like a new game, a new computer or a bike or a phone, like things like that. We had to ask our parents for them, Let's call these mid-grade purchases, $500 to $1,000. So these are the kind of purchases that you might have every, month or two as an adult, depending on how much you make, how much you save. Now, continuing with this example, pretend small grade would be things like eating out, grocery hauls, everyday purchases that are, anywhere from a couple bucks to a couple hundred, daily purchases. And large purchases, for the sake of this example, would be like buying a used car or a new household appliance like a fridge or a washing machine, or maybe you just took a spontaneous trip to IKEA, So rare, very infrequent purchases of huge amounts. Let's consider these like $1,000 to $6,000, because I know we've all seen those, model kitchens at IKEA that are like $6,000 and up. So now as an adult, you're making $5,000 a month. You've moved out. You've been paying rent for a few years now. Have you noticed that the price of those mid-grade purchases doesn't feel like as much as it was before? Now, what if you made a killing and made $20,000 a month? Do you think that spending $4,000 would feel about the same as how spending that $500 did back when you only made $2,500? If you're making $20,000 a month, how do you think spending only $500 would feel compared to when you were way younger, or when you had way less money? That's like having $100 and spending $2.50. So that's like, barely anything. The problem with this philosophy, though, is Everything feels relative. So when you feel like you spend a lot, that feeling is relative to how much you make, typically. Now, when you're proactive with saving money and try to keep your spending the same even as your income grows, gets higher, you train your brain to think in terms of absolute value instead of thinking in percentages. And this is a really important concept. So $1,000 is only 1% of 100 grand, but it's still $1,000. Those who avoid being overcome with lifestyle inflation view that $1,000 as $1,000. Doesn't matter if you make 10 grand or 10 million. $1,000 is $1,000. Whereas usually people will see, they'll make 100 grand and they'll see $1,000 as like not a whole lot because it's relative to what they have. If your income increases, you really have two options here. You can use that extra money for spending, or you can spend it on saving and investing. So you need to keep your spending as an absolute number and your savings as the percentage relative to your income. This is the key. Most people do it the other way around. And if you do it the other way around, you end up saving the same as you did before the pile of money, before you made it big, whatever, and you live more lavish instead. And the reason this happens is we have a huge desire for things. We're consumers. If you live in the United States, we are a capitalistic, consumer-driven country. And at the end of the day, if you're making 20 grand a month, you really don't need that new car. You don't need that sick jacuzzi in the backyard. You don't need that stuff. Those things are not going to make you happy. You might enjoy them, you probably will enjoy them, but they're not going to, make you happy. Happiness comes from experience and having a purpose and a goal. And I think that financial freedom as one of your top goals, if not the top goal, is a very healthy goal to have. So back to, talking about our desire for things, I'm talking about the stuff that we'd buy, like, if you were given $10 million tomorrow, like the stuff that you see when you window shop and you wish you could buy it, but you're like, probably shouldn't, even though you probably will give in anyway, a lot of the time. The more we make, the less impactful those things feel when buying them. And that's why we might not realize how lifestyle inflation actually affects us over time. Now, this isn't always bad, but it's important to find a balance between lifestyle inflation and growing your wealth. Because it's okay to use your money to have fun and treat yourself, give more, give better gifts and stuff like that. Money is, in my opinion, meant to be enjoyed. But you can't go crazy and spend everything. And at the same time, you can't be so strict that you hate the entire process of saving in the first place, because that defeats the whole purpose. You need to learn to be happy with less and savor the few things that you do spend a little bit extra on. It doesn't really matter how much money you make if you don't know how to manage it, because you could have $1 billion, and if you suck at managing it, you're going to feel like you're broke all the time. Now, lifestyle inflation is why you hear of famous athletes and musicians getting super rich, and then next thing you know, they're filing for bankruptcy the following year. It's because they get their first paycheck, they, cut the check and it's $30 million, and then they go out and buy 5 Lamborghinis, a helicopter, and a yacht. Most people like the status associated with appearing well off, or are just straight up addicted to the chemical release that happens when you buy something and you get that instant gratification feeling. Which I totally get, I experience this too. I'm not just picking on all y'all that are watching this video. I'm just saying. Just keep it real with yourself. Have you ever bought something you wanted for a while, but then the next day you wake up and feel no different, or maybe even depressed a little bit? This is because the majority of the pleasure associated with buying things is actually happening in the anticipation phase of buying. So when you're window shopping, fantasizing about how great it would be to finally buy that thing you've had your eyes on. This means that you could basically go and buy whatever it is that you've been craving, and right before you swipe your card, you could change your mind and your brain would have released basically the same chemicals, whether or not you followed through with the purchase. This is why we can end up down and depressed later on, I think, because we expect the purchase or item to make us feel better or feel happier, yet it most often doesn't do anything. But we can harness the spending psychology by putting the money into something else and not objects. When you invest money and you start to really get into it, you start to view it the same as when you buy something. Like when you buy stocks or add to your retirement fund, you can get that same chemical release in your brain that makes you feel pleasure, the same as you would get when you buy something at the store. The only catch here, the only difference, is that when you spend money on those investments, your net worth technically isn't changing. The money is just moving from your checking account to your investment account, you know? Whereas when you buy something, typically your net worth is going down. And this brings me to the core point of this video, basically, which is you should try and see money as a video game and saving money as a video game. Because you know when you're playing a game and there's some sort of scoreboard, points that you accumulate, have you ever gotten addicted to just getting the next high score or trying to get that number as high as possible? To all those like RuneScape players out there, you know, getting your coin pouch to be, you know, to grow and grow and grow and try to not spend so much because you just wanted to see that number really big and show it off. This is how you need to view money in order to really enjoy the process of saving, because the more you enjoy it, the easier it's going to become. And you'll start to make saving and investing your top priority, and it could even become more fun and rewarding than those bad spending habits are. Now imagine you train yourself for years, you know, a couple years, you train yourself to become incredibly frugal. You are very, very much a minimalist with your spending. You make a ton of money, but your expenses are as low as possible without you being miserable, so you're comfortable. Imagine you make $100,000 a year, but your monthly expenses are only $2,000 a month between everything. So maybe $1,300 in rent. You got a roommate. You budget really well with your food, and you cook at home. You don't eat out. You don't have a car payment or any debt. Stuff like that. You're very strategic about where you buy things, and you try to get all the sales. This means hypothetically you could save over 75% of your income, and you would still be chilling. Dave Ramsey only recommends 15%. So, I mean, come on. You get what I'm saying here? If you can save 75% of your income continuously, you have a much higher chance at retiring early too, compared to just saving that 15%. And I know everyone watching this video would love to retire early. So, yeah. Nobody wants to be broke for the rest of their lives. And you'll feel broke no matter how much you make if you just spend it all shortly after. Financial freedom should be your number one goal if you want to build wealth. It's not about being rich. It's about wanting to achieve a goal so bad that you make it the center of your attention. Wealth building is a lifestyle choice, and that's what people don't understand. You don't need to get rich quick. You don't need to get into some scheme that you see in YouTube ads. It's a lifestyle choice. And you can benefit from all of this money psychology stuff regardless of how much you make. You can make $100 a week, and if you still are barely spending anything, you still could have more money at the end of the year than the dude making $100,000 and spending all of that $100,000 in the same year. So think about it that way. I just wanted to share my insights on these concepts because this is how I taught myself to look at money, and it really changed my life. This is what started my whole journey with investing and saving money. And now I love it. I enjoy it. It's really fun. I'm addicted to it. And it's paid off. At the end of the day, there's two paths. There's consumerism, and then there's wealth building. It's a yin and yang. It's black and white, up and down, however you want to look at it. Ultimately, a lot of us are chasing the day when that new $50,000 car feels like $50, if you know what I mean. Which would be great, but you know, when that happens, you're still going to see it as 50. Or 50 grand, rather. Overspending is not going to get us to that $50 brand new car, though. Spending those same dollars on savings, though, absolutely can. And investing, of course. You got to put it in the right places. but I'm sure you see what I mean. So I hope this perspective makes your path to wealth just a little bit easier. This just popped into my mind earlier today, so I wanted to make a video, kind of just long form, talking about it, talking about my perspective and sharing my insights. And this is kind of how I have been looking at money for the last few years. And like I said, it's made a huge impact. So if you enjoyed today's video though, please leave a like down below. And if you want to see more weekly content just like this, please hit that big fat red subscribe button down below as well with a little notification bell next to it so you get notified every time I release a new video. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching, invest in yourself, and I'll catch you in the next one.